This is the Team Objection podcast for September 24th, 2020, episode 555. The whole that's terrible. The whole thing's now ruined. I spent all this time making the intro look fancy as fuck, and then I said the wrong number.
Start it over.
We're coming off hot with a brand new intro.
And fall flat on our faces.
454, episode 454.
I like
24th.
how Dave's intro thing was like what you would tell someone where they don't really have anything good in their life, but you want to give them a compliment still.
Mm-hmm.
So, well,
I'm holding a badass sword.
You have the most of this thing.
He's just trying to fill the mostest, and I'm like, and he didn't want to say mostest money because that was a running joke for a long time, and it's not true anymore. So,
well, it had to all kind of rhyme with mostest. You know, those are supposed to be like Easter eggs when you watch it multiple times. If you're wondering what we're talking about on the audio side, I mean, it's a video thing. We do a video show now. It's still a podcast. You're welcome to listen to it that way, but it was more than just music. Just check it out on YouTube in case you're wondering what that was all about.
Dave actually does still have the most money. Just because you spend it all doesn't mean you don't have the most money.
I also have the most people in which to spend said
money.
Well,
I mean, that's not my problem, and it goes hand in hand with the most kids. That's fine. But I'm just saying, if I go and blow all my money in gambling, I'm not going to say, I make the least in the, I don't know.
But if you combine you and your wife's income and me and my wife's income, you probably make more.
I don't think so. Well, no, maybe it would be close now.
It would be close now.
It would be close now.
I would be curious. They might have you pipped by just a little bit. I also should point out that right before the show started, I showed them on my phone. I was like, look, I made the episode number so big so I can see it. Like, it's easy to see, and I still fucked it up. So that's, behind the scenes. That's fine.
Chris is traumatized by this.
The funny part is the video worked fine. I was worried about that because I haven't really tried plugging in new sources to the whole video layout thing that we have. I mean, that was a concern. That all went great. And then I fucked up a number that doesn't even look like another number, so it's fine.
There was a season of Daredevil where they get like a, 10-minute tracking shot, and I feel like the equivalent of this is if they go through the whole tracking shot, all the karate, everything, get all the moves right, and then he goes to open the door for the finale, and the door's closed. And the whole shot's fucked up.
All right,
now.
Reset, back to 1.
It's like, no!
Guy who fell down the stairwell. You got to get prepared. You're going down that stairwell again.
Yeah.
So there's not even all the tricks I have up my sleeve. I'm not really to unveil this yet, but I have a soundboard now, so I can do stuff like this. For no reason. Just no reason at all.
Whenever we do a game show again, we can be like, correct, incorrect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that might get old for you, but...
I could do music bumpers again if I wanted to. I don't know that I do. I think the show's kind of better without them these days, other than an intro, maybe an outro.
Do we even have segments anymore to do a bumper?
Yeah, I mean, they're still sitting out there. We could pull on them if we wanted to. Lord knows there's still plenty of things to do with them.
I miss we got in a debate we were playing Jackbox with family and friends the other day, and we did a cake versus pie debate. And I was like, I miss these asinine debates. I really do.
True. And then the saw.
Yeah.
The saw.
Saws and buzz-offs and whatever the hell else anything used to be. And now we've renamed them all, but I don't remember half of them because we haven't done them in months. It's fine.
That's because their original names were so bad and so iconic.
Buzz, buzzer, buzz saw. It's like, all right, end the whole goddamn thing. It's over. Mm-hmm. Done.
As an especially deep dive down the rabbit hole, I also went back and listened to the very first piece of media we ever did together, which was back on the old NEU radio show, the Sports Report, I think it was called in that iteration.
Oh, God.
And I think that was, we've talked about it on the show before. I think that was Dave's second time meeting Shaun or something like that. And we had a Suns discussion, and it was a whole thing. But, man, it's amazing how far all three of us have come. Even me. I mean, I was a veteran at that point of 15 episodes, but boy, could none of us talk very good.
No, if I get too self-aware in what I'm saying, I trip myself up, and I can only imagine when I was in that studio, just brain firing off so many neurons. I'm sure I stumbled and didn't really say a whole lot to begin with.
No, and you were just too nervous about impressing me, probably.
That was the biggest thing. Who's this guy? Why does he have a beard?
I did have a beard then, still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't believe that, but...
And you know what? It's kind of funny because at this point, I mean, hell, for the viewers, why not? I mean, there's a whole setup here. It's kind of messy right now because I haven't cleaned it. I wasn't expecting to put this on camera, but there's soundboards, there's microphones, there's clamps, there's a monitor, there's another monitor now. Let me do other stuff. There's a whole setup here, but there was something intimidating about being in a bona fide, full-on radio studio with a massive soundboard and like a booth, and it was live, even though nobody listened on KJack. Like 7 people streamed it, so there was just something a little bit, I don't know, off-putting. Like, it was kind of like, boy, if I screw up or something, what if someone's listening? Like, what if the president's listening? Or, I don't know.
Well, also, I don't know. You've ever heard of times people have got caught swearing on a microphone or anything like that?
Yeah, like Tom Brenneman.
Yeah, recently. I can't imagine, like, sitting in that studio. I was so terrified to say anything controversial, even though I knew the show wasn't on. I'm like, but the microphone's right there. Like, it's right there. I can't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, it's okay. It turns out I was there when there was a baseball player who like got a DUI and killed someone, and the host was like really mad about it, and it was like just blasting this dude, and I was like, well, I guess there is some leeway in what we can say. Totally deserved, but yeah.
I got eventually pretty good at not swearing on a hot mic. Sort of out of necessity. It happened a couple times, and again, luckily, KJack's audience was almost non-existent, so it was easy to just be like, oops, yeah, sorry, it won't happen again. And now, of course, we've embraced it a little bit because we don't care about the clean rating on iTunes. It hasn't changed anyways, even though we drop a couple F-bombs an episode. That's fine. So we've all upped our game, basically. Here we are in video form. You can see us, you can watch us, you can experience emotion with us. Sometimes we'll say the right number of the episode, and we have a big discussion planned for this particular thing where I have one last trick up my sleeve. These guys already know about that one. It's not going to be a surprise. But let's talk about the announcements of the last week. Specifically, we're going to switch to this and just be like, wow.
Whoa.
And again, if you're not watching, you're missing out. But
So I don't want you listening or watching to just think that we're discussing this. We're not. We are actually settling the debate. By the end of this, you are going to arrive at which of these consoles you should purchase this holiday season. So we're settling the debate. Brace yourself.
No, I already know what I want.
Scream in the background. No, you don't know what you want because we haven't talked about it yet. But look, we have this chart. How could you have made your decision already?
Okay, we'll discuss it.
Thank you.
Under the guise that it should change.
So Xbox made an announcement, God, what was it, a week and a half ago or so now? Finally just giving all the details about what its ultimate forms are going to look like, their pricing, setting a date, all that jazz. PlayStation did that afterwards, kind of scooped them to some extent, opened pre-orders first. They were a disaster. Xbox's pre-orders went on sale today. They were also a disaster.
They sure were.
So that's one thing that's nice is we can unite instead of being divided in the console generation because both of these launches were horrendous.
I actually really love that Xbox was borderline throwing shade at PlayStation for the way they handled their pre-orders.
Mm-hmm.
Go online, like pretty early this morning, Xbox is all gone. I'm like, great, this is perfect. Thank you for that.
It happens every time, and I don't understand. Like every time there's a system release, these pre-orders are gone instantly, and I don't understand. Like, do they just not expect it? Are they just how does it happen every time? This is 20 years now that this has been happening.
To some extent, I think this also happens because of botting. I think most places, whether it's retailers with things like this, big consoles, big tickets that go on sale for like, once in a lifetime concerts or just huge names that are coming into a town, they get snatched up in a matter of seconds. And the question is like, well, how? How could you even have done that at that volume that quickly? I think that's the answer. I also think that might be at least partly responsible for why Xbox One X sales were up 800% on Amazon today. It's also because the Xbox's naming convention is dumb as fuck.
That's hilarious, though.
But it could be because bots got trapped into that, thinking it was the correct item because it wasn't scripted properly, and then picking up the wrong one. So, anyways.
I like to imagine Microsoft CEOs just like flipping them off, like, screw you, bots.
Yeah, I would love if there was a way to be like, sorry, no, you can't return this because we know what you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they could have theoretically put that on there, but they'd have some pissed off customers. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure what they were supposed to have done. I don't think you can make it the Xbox 2. You can't do the Xbox One 2. That sounds stupid. But we had a critical lesson from the Wii U and its failure of what not to do, which is what they're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And this is why. Because parents who don't know any better are going to go, oh, my kid wants the new Xbox. They said something about Xbox X, whatever. Okay, and they're going to get the wrong one, and you're going to have disappointed kids at Christmas.
And I can't, like, PlayStation just has it. PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3.
Yep.
Like
Well,
there you go. There's no confusion.
I have to imagine that was part of what Xbox was thinking was, like, we don't want to get into the same battle as PlayStation. We want to be unique. It's like, well, they are unique.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good thing, but they can at least they have that market cornered.
I mean, are we going to shorten the new Xbox to Xbox? Like 2 X's in there?
They should have done that.
X.
They should have just started putting more and more X's over time.
Yeah.
And it would have been Xbox 5, but instead of being like the number 5, would have just been XXXX. Now, 3 would have been a problem.
Yeah.
3 would not have been SEO friendly.
You could have put the little, superscript of 3, like the square or the cube.
Oh, a cubed. Yeah, even better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That
That's
would've
true.
Again, not SEO friendly, but still.
Not anything friendly.
So why do I bring up the naming? Because technically, when you want to look at these columns and what's different between the 2/3/4 systems here, you can already see a problem, which is the PlayStation 5 is under one umbrella, but they have to put the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S under different ones.
Well, and I didn't know if that was like partially because I'm looking at this graph. I didn't know if that was driven by literal mobile to make it mobile friendly. I don't know if all websites would do this, but it seemed really weird to me that there's a lot like they should have done PlayStation 5 digital, Xbox Series X, and then Xbox Series S. But as we go down, there might be another reason for it because once you start scrolling, there are actual pretty big spec differences between the X and S.
Which it kind of it lends itself to why this price difference exists, because the only difference with the PlayStation 5 digital is it doesn't have the disc drive.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is identical under the hood, whereas the Series S, that's not the case. That's probably why, but we will get there. Let's talk price first. $499 for both. If you're getting the full-fledged version with all the bells and whistles, that, to me, even before we break down the secondary versions, is a relief. We talked about how 600 was like the breaking point for me and Shaun, maybe, but we wouldn't have liked it. Anything more than that, we probably would have passed completely. $499 is, I think, a very competitive, fair price point.
I actually think I was expecting like 550, 600, and I was thinking like 700 is like my absolute man. If it's $699 and it were never to go down, and I found and they're coming out with Final Fantasy 16 and all this shit I care about, I maybe would have considered that. But people were saying it could be $800 because of like the PC specs that are going into this thing. So yeah, 500, huge win, huge relief for me.
Well, I feel like this is going to be something that they're going to compete with going forward, of the fact of, since they make their money on the games and the games make their money on microtransactions so frequently, they can kind of keep this price level stable for the most part. I mean, if I remember right, the original PlayStation 3 when it came out was $600, and that was in 12 years ago dollars.
Yeah, that
So
was a
that
problem.
was a mistake.
Yeah, then they flaunted that price point like it was a good one, and then said it had Ridge Racer. So that
Yeah.
that did not go poorly, or that did not go well, rather, over time.
Yeah.
So then the secondary version, it's $399 for the digital edition of the PS5, which is, again, no disc drive, everything else is the same, so you're all digital, and $299 for the Series S for reasons that we'll get into in a bit, but again, it's because there's less under the hood.
So what's interesting about this is to kind of tip my hat. I want to create this big divisive war. I want us going at each other's throats. I'm probably going to get both. But it's funny to me that the Series S is so much cheaper, but I'm probably going to get the X for the Xbox and the digital edition for the PlayStation 5.
That's because you're a Microsoft fanboy.
That's not true, but it is a little true.
But you will use the Xbox more than the PlayStation, because unless it's an exclusive, you'll play anything that's multi-platform on the Xbox, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I like the infrastructure. I like the familiarity I have with Xbox. I am ashamed to say it. I like the achievements aren't meaningless to me. They're not like a system seller, but they're enough of a nudge to get me to continue buying it.
I mean, nowadays there are not very many exclusives anymore, really, are there?
We're gonna get to that, Dave. But no,
Yeah.
I mean, PlayStation definitely is the console for exclusives now. Much more so than Xbox, and Xbox, especially if you have a PC as well. If you have a good PC, it gets a lot harder to justify also owning an Xbox.
Which is where things get a little tricky for me and even you now.
Yeah.
You do have a high-end gaming PC now. If you wanted to play things that way, you could kind of get by without an Xbox, probably.
It crossed my mind.
But that's tough.
But like I jumped way ahead, so I apologize. I do like if we start going over the specs of both of these,
we'll get there.
Yeah.
So release date, I mean, it's going to be out on the 12th. The PS5 is anywhere that matters. There are some places it will not be, but the heavy hitters like US, like Japan, are getting it the 12th. The Xboxes are coming out the 10th. To me, that's a negligible difference. It's one's a Tuesday, one's a Thursday. It's the same week.
Yep.
There aren't any really heavy-hitting launch titles on either side. There's a handful of decent things, but there's nothing like somebody has to have it day one to where I think, Xbox can lord over PS5 and be like, haha, we have 2 days of extra time with it. Nobody's going to care.
Yeah. Especially now, like, no one's going to the store to get these. Like, it's all being delivered, so, like, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. And are you going to stand in line for a midnight release? Are places even going to do that with the coronavirus right now?
Exactly what I was thinking.
No.
I once stayed awake all night in a Target parking lot for a Wii, which, in hindsight, was even worse than it felt then.
I have a great anecdote on that is when the Wii came out, I worked at GameStop. And so it was really easy for me to get a Wii the moment it came out because I just put one from the shipment in the back and I was all set.
Yeah, I got sick for like a few days. I stayed up all night. It turns out I had food poisoning too. And then they wanted to do a thing where you raced from the back of the parking lot to the front for some reason because they couldn't. There was a line that had formed. They were like, "Look, we want to be fair," and we're like, "Yeah, but we're in a line. Like we all feel like that's fair already." And they're like, "We're gonna have you guys line up and race to the store." I was like, "This is not even real." But I actually would have been fine with that. I mean, I have to think I would have gotten like among the top finishers.
They just want to be like dance monkeys. I want to run for my entertainment.
That actually is what it kind of felt like.
Ridiculous, but I kind of like it nonetheless.
Yeah.
Optical drive. It's got a Blu-ray drive, except the digital version of the PS5. It doesn't. To me, this isn't even a selling point for a system anymore. Is it nice to be able to pop a Blu-ray in? I guess. The number of times I've done that with the PS4 is like 3 in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I own more movies than probably either of you. I do. I like it. It's not a huge deal, but yeah, it's nice. I think my Xbox One has the 4K, and because it's a what do you call it? Xbox One X. So stupid. So it does have the 4K thing. My PlayStation doesn't. So like I do watch those things on Xbox instead. But
it's I don't know. For me, I guess for some people who have families, like I do have some discs that my kids watch, and I never bought a Blu-ray player specifically because we had the PlayStation, so it didn't really make sense for me. So it's nice to have on there, and I imagine that I'm not going to keep the PlayStation 4 and 5 in the same spot. So having the Blu-ray player there is really good.
She's trying to chime in. She doesn't know shit about consoles.
He's like, Shaun, PlayStation 5, woof, woof.
Yeah, this is an added bonus, no question. It is nice to have as a feature, but it's one where if I go digital and I'm leaning that way, although I'm very much on the fence still, that's going to be part of my consideration where it's like, I watch everything via streaming now. Mm-hmm. Almost everything. Even for the things I own, I've been watching Legend of Korra on Netflix, even though I've owned the Blu-ray for a couple of years now. So maybe that's something I can go without now. System spec wise, this is where we start to see the differences, and we're not going to get too much into the weeds about what exactly these numbers mean, but you can tell there's a pretty noticeable difference and why it's $200 cheaper for the Series S. The RAM, the memory bandwidth, the CPU are almost the same. The average of the bandwidth for the Xbox Series X basically equals out to the PS5. The processor's slightly stronger in the Xbox One X, but it's pretty comparable. But boy, you look over that right-hand column and you start seeing like, oh yeah, like that's not nearly as powerful of a system. It's better than the Xbox One, but not a ton.
It's interesting to me. Are we ever going to run into a situation where a game can run on like on the X and less good or not at all on the S? Like, is that going to be a thing that we run into at some point?
No, I mean it's really possible, and it's going to be a huge problem if it comes out where, a system, or even if it comes down to something along the lines of there's a game that there's almost no loading time on the X, but 15, 20, 30-second loading times on the S. Like, if it's something along those lines, I mean, people might be really kind of upset about that.
Yeah, I think the graphical quality and the load times, especially because both consoles have been so prevalent in talking about how we're going to get rid of load times this generation, which I love. We talked about it in a past episode. I love that. It's one of my biggest selling points for these. If that doesn't exist on the Series S, that immediately disqualifies it for me. Like, I'm like Shaun, where I'm kind of on the... I don't think I'm going to get an Xbox. There is one reason I might that we'll talk about later, but I would, if I was going to get one, I would go for the big one because I wouldn't want that to happen if I got the cheaper one.
I know some people are going to see this, and $200 is going to be the difference based on their income or whatever else. But I just think if you're spending that much money and those are the difference in the specs, like, don't get the half-assed one. Like, just spend a little bit more, get the full one.
Or on the flip side, you get that system and you can buy a controller and a game and 2 games for the price of the difference. You know what I mean?
I guess I just have a real issue with paying a lot of money for not like a subpar kind of system. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right too. Yeah, I mean, especially with controllers probably being like $70 now and all that.
Are. And that's kind of the thing, right? Is like we're all at the point now where we have our own income and we can all afford to do whatever we want with these things. But for families who are looking at this, that $200 price difference is going to mean exactly that. That's where Dave's perspective actually kind of comes in handy here, because we know how parents are going to think when they have kids who play video games and they're not well versed in them. This is the point where they're going to go, well, I can do exactly that. I can get 2 controllers. I can get a couple games. It'll still be the same price. They'll be happy enough, even if it's not the best. It'll be good enough, right? And they'll probably be right, but we'll see.
You're right too. Like the undiscerning kid, are they going to be like, there's a 2 gig difference in the... Probably not. I know I wasn't like that when I was different times, but...
Does it play Fortnite?
Yeah, I wasn't like, what's the GPU of the Sega versus the Super Nintendo? It's just like I was happy to get anything.
I just remember like 8-bit Nintendo, 16-bit Super Nintendo, and Sega had a 32X. I'm like, oh my god, that's 32-bit. That's like twice as good.
Yeah, the Nintendo 64. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah,
exactly.
64 is double 32.
I'm wondering though, when you talk about that, about just undiscerning parents, I feel like this is one of the first generations of game systems that are coming out that the parents buying it for the kids grew up playing games though.
I agree with that to some extent. There are still going to be plenty of parents who don't know because they didn't game, but it is sort of a changing climate now. I was actually thinking about that earlier, where it's like, yeah, I mean, at this point, anybody who's seriously into this hobby and would be willing to drop that much on it is going to do it for them and or their kids and hope that they can get the kids to play with them. And that is kind of cool that we're all around that age where that's going to happen, because my dad played with me when I was a kid, but I know that was a extreme outlier.
Yeah. Well, and imagine like someone like Maisie buying like... So some of us are going to know, but then there's going to be tons of parents that they didn't really grow up with it. So they're going to be like, is Xbox the one with Mario on it? And then they're not going to have any clue.
The amount of times when I worked at GameStop, I asked, are they ever going to release Mario for the PlayStation? No, they're not.
Now, look, I'm probably the most tech savvy of the 3 of us overall. We each have our strengths. I don't know what the fuck any of these numbers mean on the GPU. I've heard of teraflops. I understand gigahertz. I'm not like completely blind on this. I've heard of ray tracing. It seems to be all the rage right now, but I don't have enough distinction to tell you what the difference is between these 3. But again, the biggest takeaway from this is that the Series S is pretty far behind, and its 4K or lack thereof is one of the biggest differences. That one's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've heard, the Xbox is the most powerful. Not necessarily the easiest to develop for, so the developers aren't always going to be able to get the most out of it, milk it for all it's worth, but that's what I'm hearing. So if Xbox is the most powerful, which is another good reason to want it for third-party games, but then the PlayStation has all the exclusives, and they're really owning that part of it now, which is pretty cool.
And really, with the 4K output that everything's being output in now, the difference is not that high. To an untrained eye, there's basically no difference in visual output.
I gotta say, I watched the trailer for the new Spider-Man, and I was like a little bit disappointed. I was like, I can't really tell a difference between
Yeah.
this PlayStation 5 and the very good game that was on the PlayStation 4.
I think it is discernible, but it's real small. The gap is just
Mhm.
not, because I mean, I played Horizon Zero Dawn originally on a regular PS4, and then it broke in the middle, and I had to get a Pro. And did it look nicer on the Pro in 4K when I had it on that TV? Yeah. I think especially in a game that has like those sweeping environments, it's a little easier to tell in some ways. But it wasn't like it looked bad before. It was just kind of like, okay, this is like 10, 20% better. But it wasn't like the first time you saw something on HD. You know, like I remember watching a Suns game with Dave on his giant ass
my
TV
God.
back in like '06 or somewhere thereabouts, and just being like, "Oh my God!" Well, I'm assuming it was like what it was. It's probably not the same, but akin to when people got color for the first time.
Yeah, the first Suns game I remember watching in HD, I was just like, what have I been missing my entire life? Oh my God.
I bet you it's pretty close. Because color, the quality really wasn't better. It was just things are in color now. To be able to see the ball, it's like when you get glasses for the first time when you're a kid. Well, if you're me and you're or like really any of us and you're blind, it's like, oh my God, the trees have leaves on them.
This is what everyone sees. Oh my God.
That was huge. Now, what somebody brought up with the Spider-Man one was like the street was just packed with people, and like those are going to be the types of differences that we see, like what they can output and present, and like the size of maps and things like that. But
the crowd of a basketball game is not going to be the same 15 models, and that's it.
You sure hope so.
Yeah. You really do, because boy, is that noticeable over time, especially in like the show. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
Handful of other numbers here we're not super worried about. The PS5 has better data transfer speed. It probably ties into their big load time push, which the Xbox also has, but I think that's definitely a part of it. Storage-wise is interesting. It's similar across the two major platforms, and again, the S is behind the curve on that. I got to be honest with you, a 0.5 terabyte SSD is not going to cut it.
I mean, that gets you 3 games, maybe.
5 at most. If they're full-fledged AAA titles, they're coming in around 80 to 100 these days.
Well, and now Xbox, at least, maybe PlayStation 2 has proprietary memory cards to expand that, and so you're talking a bunch of money to get more storage nowadays.
And that's on a system in which I can't have a physical drive is just shitty to me. It's like, all right, I'm going to buy this thing that doesn't have any discs. Oh, every time I want to buy something new, I have to either A, delete an old game, or B, go buy a solid state memory thing. Or there's this great thing called a Blu-ray disc, which has the memory on it that I just pop in there. It sucks. I think that's really shitty.
Now, both of these do have the external support for either individual drives or USB stuff, which is fine. It's going to be necessary for almost everybody this generation. And I think the biggest problem with that is even if you have the disk drive, I think both these consoles are going to be just full-on installs. You're not going to run it off the disc anymore. I know that's the case with PS5. I haven't read up enough on Xbox to know for sure, but I think that's true on both, where you're just going to pop the game in and install it as though you were downloading it anyways. The difference is you'll have a tangible copy. You can share it. You can resell it, trade it in, whatever. But at this point, you're running everything off the hard drive one way or the other, so you're going to need enough space, and 512 just is not going to cut it. That's the thing that gives me the red flag about the S.
Yeah.
So clarify. So you on the PlayStation, you're going to pop the disc in, download it to the system, and then what type of check is it going to be to make sure that you still have the disc, or because otherwise it'd be like, all right, I'm going to download this onto my system, and here you go, Chris. I'm going to let you download it onto your system. And...
Well, because I mean, I think it's going to work. Well, I don't know that for sure. I was assuming it would work similar to what it is now, where the game still has to download the disc. But it's still going to run off the disc. You're still going to need to have the disc in the system to run it.
Yeah. I imagine that's what it's going to be, but if it's downloaded the entire thing, all that it is just basically a quick check to make sure you have the disc in the system.
Which I think is going to have to be. Because
Yeah.
one of the limitations of Blu-ray and like CDs before it is there's a certain speed at which you can read those discs, and that's going to prohibit them from doing this faster loading gameplay that they've been talking about with this, because they're using solid-state drives, and those are so much faster than traditional hard drives. We'll have to see how it all plays out. I mean, none of us have all the answers yet. Nobody's really had their hands on one of these yet. We've barely even seen pictures of them that weren't in like a set-up studio environment just to see exactly how big they are.
Yeah.
So we're still operating with some unknowns right now.
And we're 50 days away from it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that is certainly a thing.
Super interesting.
Backwards compatibility is expected at this point. I think both systems learned last time that they made a mistake not having included that more at launch. So that's nice. We still don't know exactly what that looks like either. I think Xbox is a little bit more promising.
Well, so this is actually a really interesting category. So PlayStation 4, I thought they said it's not like true backwards compatible for all of the games. They need to kind of build it in, sort of like they did with this generation. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's another reason we finally come to one of the biggest driving forces for me to get the full-on Series X and the digital of the PlayStation. I have a PlayStation 4. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to have a system to play those games. The Xbox One can play all my Xbox One games, 360 games. They even talked about possibly some Xbox games. That might have been a rumor, but I know, like, I was reading about that. So to be able to plug those in, because I have a huge 360 library, I wouldn't want to get the digital, and not that I'd want the S anyway, but like that's one where you want the full thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the idea of the backwards compatibility for, like you said, Shaun, of the idea of just being able to play whatever library you have. But then, I don't know. I hate like you said, your PlayStation 4 is not going anywhere. I'm not going to give up my PlayStation 4, but I hate the idea of having to like either hook two systems up to a TV, one that's barely going to be used, or having to switch them out. Like, it's a minor annoyance, but it is an annoyance nonetheless. So having that backwards compatibility is great.
It's especially true for me because I could hook up multiple systems underneath this table where everything is all wired up down there, but it's awful nice to have to climb underneath a desk to get to it every time. And if I have one system that we're going to be doing the bulk of our recording off of, that's a small but still existent selling point for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. PlayStation VR, is that like? I feel like at some point that's going to matter, as in the broader scheme of things. Like beyond just this is kind of nice to have if you can afford it.
That's the PlayStation VR, like virtual reality?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's probably the biggest name in VR gaming right now, probably. I know Oculus and some others, but it just doesn't, it's not a big mover right now. It doesn't matter that much, but I'm wondering if it will in this next generation.
I think it will at some point in the next gen. Yeah, I think it's just not widespread enough yet, and it's a little bit cost prohibitive when you're already looking at, say, $400 or $500 for a system. That's tough to get those moms and pops out there to be like, yeah, I also want this weird headset to play like 3 games.
Yeah,
but it will get there.
And the couple that the couple that I've tried, maybe there's better ones out there. The couple I've tried are pretty garbage as far as gameplay goes. You know.
I mean, they really are like, this is VR. You can do this thing. Now, I've heard Half-Life is like the big innovator in that, though. That's like the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
I mean, it's a question that we sort of faced with the Wii, right? Where it was like, oh, wow, look at these motion controls. And there was how many games that actually used them effectively? Like Wii Sports, Wii Sports Resort.
Skyward Sword.
I mean, would you even say Skyward Sword, though? Like, it used it. Would you say that it enhanced the Zelda formula? I would not. I thought that
stab.
Yeah,
that was the best.
And slash. And
vertical
slash.
It was a good use for what it was. Like when I play Wii fucking tennis, I was like, okay, this is fun. I am actually having fun. For me, this is adding something to this experience. Skyward Sword, I was like, I would kind of rather just have a controller, and I felt the same with Metroid Prime 3, honestly. I'm stuck in that game because I'm like, this is fine, it works, it's okay, but my preference would just be a controller.
Yeah.
Opening doors feels good.
It does, but yeah.
The Switch did a good job of having that options, like Mario Odyssey having the option of like, you can throw your hat by doing this, or you can just push the button.
Yeah, that was smart of them to realize that not everybody either wants to, or in some cases is not able to.
Mm-hmm.
Making gaming more accessible rather than less for people who may not have full mobility or whatever the case might be. That's a smart thing. We're almost down to the bottom here. They're both going to have a streaming system. Doesn't really warrant mentioning, especially because we just know so few details right now. Probably some classic games, some new releases, whatever. That's fine. They're both going to have the subscription service still. PlayStation Plus carries over. I'm assuming Live does. I don't know for sure, but why wouldn't it? So like, I have a year subscription for Plus right now because of the NBA we've been doing. It's good to know that's going to just kick over when I get the system, assuming I do. We'll talk about that at the end. I guess we don't know where the USB ports are on a PS5, but it's certainly going to have them. They've already confirmed USB hard drive support, so of course it has at least a USB port. And then there's just like hookups and some other stuff. This is all, look at all this TBAs at the bottom of this.
I think they're going to get, they are both USB-C.
Yeah, they should be at this point.
But yeah.
Yeah. So
interesting on that you put up there, used game fee TBA. That's an interesting topic if that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, there is that question of what this looks like, especially if most people start going all digital, where there's going to be no need for GameStop anymore. Not that there really is right now. What that looks like for any kind of retail model, really, because this is a chance for both of these guys to cut out retailers and just get a bigger chunk of the pie for their releases.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's going to be a full-fledged thing or if people are still going to cling to their discs, but at the very least, there's going to be more digital users than there were last generation. That opens the door for Sony and Microsoft to get a bigger chunk of their own profits.
I don't know how that works. Like like the entire used game market, can it even exist anymore going forward? If it's all digital.
It could. Steam has dipped their toes into this a couple different times. Nothing with like a full-fledged effort. But just to kind of see like what loaning out a title might be to somebody you know or a contact. PlayStation's kind of done that where like we've done it to let you play NBA with us, but I could do it to let you play a game on your own that you don't own. I could be like, here, Dave, play Uncharted 4 or whatever the hell. There's been some like circling around this, but I don't think anybody really knows what to make of it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of borrowing. Of the idea of like, I have a user, I'm going to allow this user to take my game, and then I don't have access to it while the other user has access to it. That type of thing.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, and you have to refresh it every hour, which is a bit of a pain. But guess what? You had to do stuff like that before, or legitimately do it when you were taking it back to like a rental place. You had 2 days, one day, didn't finish it by then. You're going back. We talked about this like last week or the week before, where it's like you take it back, you immediately like, all right, here's my money. I'm going back home, and drive back and head back home.
But even if they did it they did the refresh every 1 day or something like that, all you had to do is like, okay, I just have to check in that this person still has it, or like check, sign in type of thing. I don't know, re-grant permission every other day or something. I don't know. There's options that could be done to really cut out the middleman when it comes to that type of thing.
And the last thing I'll note is you'll notice they haven't really talked about always online this gen, because that was another colossal fuck up everybody made in the last generation that turned a lot of people off from the beginning. That's not to say they might not try something like that at some point, but it doesn't appear to be part of their launch plans, which is a relief.
And they're not, they're not verbalizing it, which is probably good. I hope it's not because they're planning on it and they just don't want to announce it, but I can't imagine.
So
the controller, I kind of prefer the PlayStation 1. Normally I like the Xbox one more, but the fact that the PlayStation is trying to update their design and enhance it when the Xbox is like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I appreciate the extra effort.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's difficult to discern the Xbox controller from any previous generation's Xbox controller.
I don't think it really is. There might be like some haptic differences, but it's pretty much the same thing, which is why they're you can use like the same controllers, but you cannot with the PlayStation because they're actually like, it's not just the same thing.
Yeah. The PlayStation controller, how protruded are those buttons? Because that picture there that's on the screen there doesn't look like they're protruded at all.
I think they're pretty similar to the last couple DualShocks. This is called a DualSense or a Dual...
Yeah.
I think it's DualSense. It's a slightly different name. It's still the same shit, but it's got a little bit more stuff under the hood there. But I mean, it's a small difference. I think I like the joysticks better on the Xbox, just the way they feel, and like the dots they have around the rim that kind of give it that texture. Yep. But I don't like their face buttons as much. I prefer PlayStation for that. So it's a small difference. It's not going to be a system seller for me either way. I probably like PlayStation's a little more. Honestly,
the more of the system seller part when you're talking about controllers is the fact that PlayStation has a rechargeable battery. Xbox is still going to have double A's.
Really?
Still?
Yeah. So that's
in 2020.
Yeah.
I did not hear about that.
That's like the only thing keeping double A's going, I feel like, these days.
I swear I thought the Xbox One already got rid of that. Like, how is that even possible?
No, you can absolutely buy them separately.
Buy it separately.
Yeah.
They're still going to charge you $70 for the controller, just like the PlayStation would. But buy that battery pack separately, sure.
Oh yeah.
But I'm starting to have USB-C cables all over the house now because they're becoming more common. My phone uses them, etc. So that's going to be really easy for PlayStation 5. I have a bunch of those now.
Yep.
It's harder to find the older cables. I try and find my PS3 charger cables, and I'm like, oh god, I don't have these old USB bricks anymore.
Even the PS4 controllers aren't. I wish they had USB-C on those PS4 controllers, but
What a missed opportunity for me, though, for like backwards compatibility for PlayStation. They must have done some kind of market research and said the cost to put in this compatibility is not worth the customers who would care about it. But that would make it real tough on me because I have a bunch of like PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2 games. I don't own either of those consoles. I would love to have a way to play it. That would be a for sure sell for me.
Mm-hmm.
I must be in the minority, though. Oh, well.
I guess so. All right, so we'll switch back to this show. No, not that. Oh, God. Oh, God. I'll have to fix that. That's good to know. Moment of truth now. We talked about fighting to the death. We didn't actually end up doing it because we just mature discussions at this point. But moment of truth. What are you going to pick? You can only pick one. You can't be Shaun and buy both, or me and maybe buy both.
If you only have to pick one?
Oh, we have to bring up one more thing before
okay.
because this informs my decision on it. Dave, did you hear about the Bethesda deal?
Oh, God, yeah.
Microsoft buying Bethesda?
Yeah,
Yep.
and a bunch of other properties because Bethesda is technically under another umbrella that encompasses more than just them. That's the one thing that gives me pause because...
Fallout is dead to me now.
That's what I was going to say. If you ever want to play Fallout...
or Elder Scrolls 6 when it comes out in 2057.
For me, like the Dishonored, the Arcane games are really great. Dishonored, Prey, a bunch of those... It's a big deal. I was actually thinking the reason first-person shooters I don't care about that much is because you go, like, this doesn't sound really dumb. You go and you shoot things, and that's the experience. Like that's it. You go from one location, you shoot things on the way, and it's almost like a especially if you're playing on the PC, it's just like you're clicking the interface. It's so boring. But what I liked about Arcane was like it's like an adventure game. There's like a bunch of different stuff that you can do. There's so much more depth to it. And I was thinking those thoughts, and then I heard that Microsoft bought the company that does those games. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So anyway, it's a big deal for me.
Yeah, I don't know. Outside of Fallout, it doesn't make too much of a difference from me. Fallout 76 was nothing even to think of. So Fallout 5, I have no idea when it's coming out, how long it'll take to do. So I don't know. It's one of those things that it's not going to make too much of a difference for me, I don't think, right now at least.
You haven't played Elder Scrolls yet. Maybe you'll love Skyrim.
Skyrim should be at the top of your list.
If Elder Scrolls 6 comes out in 2057, I'll have plenty of time to rectify that.
Yeah, we'll be old and we'll have no button time, and it'll all be VR, and we'll be terrible at it, but it's fine.
True story.
Yeah, it gives me a little bit of pause if we do get the follow-up to Skyrim and it's only on Xbox, which is not even known for sure. Phil Spector talked about how there was going to be some titles that they were going to have that were not exclusive, depending on what they were from, what studio, whatever. But that would be one where I'd have to consider getting an Xbox if it was going to be exclusive, and not just a timed exclusive. But maybe even if it was, that's one of the few games coming up that I would be super stoked about, assuming it's going to be any good, which, God, I would hope so. I hope 76 is an outlier and not a sign of things to come from Bethesda. You do get that sense that this would have been a colossal deal 5 years ago, and now it is still a big deal, but there is that little bit of like shine that's been taken off of Bethesda's luster now.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. It's one of those things that because the unknown is still there, you can just kind of wait and pick a system up, pick it up when it, 2 years when it goes on sale type of, I don't know, like there's no real rush in that instance if it's just
I'm probably going to end up waiting anyway. Like we'll see when God of War 2, which was announced, Dave, and Final Fantasy 16, when those start coming out, we'll see if I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to wait and play Cyberpunk on whichever console I get next, so that's going to be another thing too.
Yeah, probably smart. But there's nothing coming out at launch for either system that I'm like gung-ho about.
No.
Like, will Demon's Souls be neat? Probably, but I don't care about that right now. It'll look nicer, but
I feel like I almost want to get one before the end of the year, merely to have the system, so that when a game comes out I don't have to worry about going to get the system, if that makes sense.
Well, you're not alone on that. Did you try and order an Xbox or pre-order an Xbox, Shaun?
I looked and it was like unavailable, and I was like, okay.
I tried to pre-order a PS5. I actually had one in a cart at one point. I think it was on it was either Walmart or Best Buy. I don't remember which. Couldn't complete the checkout. I was just going to finish the pre-order and then maybe cancel it later. I wanted to have the option of it and then decide. That was really difficult because both systems butchered their pre-order launch, as we mentioned at the top of the show. So now, who knows? Apparently, there's a lot of people who share Dave's perspective where they're like, well, I'm just going to get this because we do know in the middle of the pandemic, there's been system shortages, especially for the Switch. But just across the board, everybody wants to get laptops, partly for school, partly for gaming, and systems to game on because they're not leaving their house as much. So, of course, everyone's going to want this new hotness. And it doesn't seem like either company is going to be able to deliver enough of them on launch, which is a little bit troubling.
Which I know that production started early, but man, how do you not like ramp this up as much as physically possible? Like, I just don't understand how they're not pumping these things out in production right now. Like, the demand is there, fill it.
Yeah, I've never really understood that. Nintendo's the worst of all three. Not to go, we don't want to enter the fanboy wars, but let's be honest. Nintendo's doing that right now with a stupid collection of 3 of their best games. So, like, we know what happens.
Yeah, well, and it's not only that they're not meeting the demand, it's that, like, they're botching the whole thing. I know for the Xbox, they were open, and then they weren't. And then they were, and then they weren't again. And it's just like, what is happening?
Yep,
so that's annoying. So what are you going to do, Dave? You have to choose one.
Choose one.
I have to choose one. Shaun, you clearly convinced me. The Xbox Series X, 5, 10, 30, 361. I don't remember the name anymore. No, PS5. No, PS5 for sure.
But which one? Because that's the key for me, because it is going to be PS5, but digital or disc drive?
I can't. In my history, I don't know what it is. I can't get the just digital. I don't know what it is. I like having games. I like having the box. Like, if I ever buy a used game, it pisses me off if I get the generic box. I have to have the real one.
Dave, you're speaking to a person who bought a box without a game just to have a nicer box. I upgraded. I didn't even own Resident Evil 5 Gold Edition, but I wanted the case, so I got just the case.
And it's stupid, and it's because when I set them up on a shelf, I'm like, look at this.
Exactly. Who sees this shelf? No one. I don't care.
Exactly. My shelf is literally under my TV in the entertainment center where I have to open a door to see it.
Yeah.
It looks so beautiful, though, when I see all the games. So, no, I can't not have discs. Like, the idea of a digital one and, like, scroll, I don't know. Even though it's probably better. Even though it's probably better just to download them and have them on there and be able to just access it from wherever, not have to run downstairs to get a disc. I still probably am going to buy the one with the disc drive.
This is where I'm really conflicted. We kind of talked about this a little bit in our text thread that day, but I'm like, man, I think if someone was holding a gun to my head, first I'd be like, sir, why are you threatening me over this? And then second, I'd be like, I think I'm getting the digital one.
When you say that, he cocks it.
Yeah.
So
okay. The digital one, I'm sorry, I don't need the disc drive. He's like, good, and he just leaves. That's all he needed.
Yeah.
Everything you said is spot on, Dave. I've agreed with it for most of my life, and I think about my PS3 games that are sitting on a shelf down there doing absolutely nothing. Continuing to do absolutely nothing. I won't trade them in on the off chance I ever might want to play them again someday.
And you'll get 2 pennies. Won't. And you get 2 pennies for it anyway. So
and if I do play them again, they're either going to be released digitally on another platform in the future, on one of these newer ones, or remastered to give me a new incentive to play it, because that's one of the biggest trends right now. I've taken good care of my discs over time. I've never had to worry about them getting scratched or dinged up and becoming unusable because of it. And despite all of that, I just think it might be the smart choice to go digital now. The only thing that makes me pause about it is not being able to loan out games. Because we've been doing that with you, Dave, a decent amount, where I'm like, here, just play Persona 5 Royal. I'm done with it. But if there's a digital way to do that, that would be the last nail in the coffin. If we find out there's an expanded share play version on the PS5, that will be the last straw, and I'll be like, fine, I'm going digital. And if that's wrong, if I end up not liking it, I'll learn from that lesson and I won't repeat it. But I think I'm going to get that one if I have a chance to pre-order it.
I think everything you said makes so much sense, because then, I started thinking about the idea of how I have to go run and grab a different disc, and or like, especially for me on the Switch with my kids, when they play the Switch, they were like, I want to play Mario Kart. No, I want to play Mario Odyssey. No, I want to play Just Dance. No, I want to play Yoshi. Like, the idea of them just being on the system, being like, click, click, click. Okay, good. Instead of having to pick the system up, I get terrified that they're going to drop the Switch on the ground every single time I see them pick up the system. If they just click, click, click over, like,
It is nice. On the digital games that I do own, because I'm such an advocate for discs, but I do own digital games. It's really nice to be like, okay, close you, open you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a big deal. I usually carry all my games with me. Take it out, you reslot it, it's whatever. But it's convenience. It's more convenience to just have it on the system.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one that switches between games quickly. I usually play a game, it's done, I take it out, I put in the next one. Like, very rarely do I switch discs out. It's not common for me to play multiple games at once.
But the
So
Switch,
that doesn't, yeah,
sorry.
the Switch, sorry, yeah, that's really so that doesn't matter that much for me, but it is nice to have.
But the Switch has been my home for that. Because
Yeah,
it has
exactly.
games that I like to play in small bursts, like Tetris 99, like Rocket
Mhm.
League.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not generally going to play those for hours at this point. I did that a little bit with Rocket League when it first came out. I was playing it for hours, but now I'm like, I'll play a couple quick games, and I'm like, oh, what else sounds good? Okay, Tetris 99. Okay, let's play Golf Story. Let's try this.
So I'm
Yeah.
a Switch bitch, and I have here's why. So I play it like all the time. Road trip, downstairs during dinner, in my room. So if it's a game where I'm alone and I can think, and like let's say it's a Phoenix Wright and I need to be able to read it, I'm not going to play that game on a road trip where I'm totally absorbed in the game. I'm going to do something like Fire Emblem, which I should have to think about, but I don't anymore because I played it 6 times. So like that's a great game for me where if I'm with Maisie or if I'm on the road, I will play that. But then if I'm like my attention is getting too absorbed, I can switch. So I like being able to switch quickly is what the fable of that entire story was.
Mm-hmm.
Set Switch.
The fable, the moral of the story.
Chris got it. That's good.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
But I mean, I don't know. I could go either way. In all honesty, it is. I wouldn't be disappointed if I got the non-disc one, but because everything's streaming nowadays too. I was talking about having to play movies for my kids or something like that. It's nice to have. Not really necessary anymore.
The same guy has a gun to your head now. He's gone from our house. He's now at your house.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he got down to Phoenix fast.
Yeah, he sure did.
He's a night terror. I don't understand his movement, but it's scary. Let's be honest. The man can teleport and he can put guns to your head for trivial reasons.
Yeah, he doesn't even care.
Yeah.
But please answer. Now he's waiting. He's cocked it.
Yeah.
Disc drive.
Disc drive PlayStation 5.
Yep.
Okay.
I just think they did a really clever price point with it. If it had been a $50 difference, I would have still gotten the disc drive and been like, I was tempted, but $100 is enough that I'm giving it consideration, and I will probably lean that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
get
almost
that game.
convinced Dave, by the way. Like
I saw.
Yeah.
he was
But
like, so, and you're like,
if
wow.
I needed more time, but the gunman got there too fast, and he made him make a knee-jerk
Yeah.
decision. And that's
Dave was
tough.
like, definitely disc drive, and you're like, I don't know, I'm thinking digital. He was like, oh,
digital. And then,
Maybe.
oh shit, disc drive.
yeah. Gun to my head, if there's one that I had to choose, I'm choosing PlayStation 5 because I'm gonna get games that I can't get anywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a big deal. Like if I have to do. Like what? Halo? If I absolutely have to play the next Halo, which I probably will, then I can get it on PC. If that's the one game that I'm going to miss out on.
Play it with an Xbox controller still. So
Yeah,
it's really
like,
not that different.
Whatever. What I am going to do is buy an Xbox Series X and buy the PS5 digital version. But yeah, if I had to, if I could only choose one, it's the disc drive PlayStation. But I feel like you save a little bit of money on the digital version for like those select games that I bought that system for, the Persona 6, and we'll see. Final Fantasy I think is probably a timed exclusive, but every generation PlayStation has games that you can't get anywhere, or at least for a very long time. Horizon Zero Dawn only now is coming out for PC.
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot to me. So yeah, that's my weird answer. That in one I'm getting the disc drive PlayStation, and another I'm getting the Xbox Series X, but the digital PlayStation 5.
I am never going to be able to borrow games from you guys ever again.
I'm just enjoying the thought of the gunman having his gun to your head this whole time. You're going through like this minute and a half explanation. He's getting like
okay, all
he's
right.
getting nervous. He's like, "Is this what I want him to say? I don't know." And he's finally like, "All right, you pass."
Yeah, good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's so frustrated, he just blows his own head off. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no one wants to buy the system I don't want him to, so I guess I'm done here. All right, well, that's the end of the episode. We'll probably talk about this more as the launch window comes up, and we'll keep you posted if one of us actually manages to pre-order it, because 0-for-3 so far, although Dave hasn't really tried. But
I did. I tried Amazon, and that was a no-go.
Yeah.
yeah, I was refreshing that page a decent amount that day, just kind of in between stuff while I was working. I would just kind of periodically every 15, 20 minutes be like, refresh, and currently unavailable. Oh. And I've heard, by the way, that they're making 8-2, 7-3-ish full PS5s versus digital only. So the one that I want, in theory, might be the harder one to come by. Guess we'll see. But I don't know if I was able to confirm that. I saw a couple different stories that had it as a rumor, but I don't know if I ever saw that was official. But it sounded like production was going much heavier on the regular PS5, so we'll see. Hold on, I want to play one more thing before we go. Good. Good. We'll get a soundboard eventually.
Was that the gunman?
Yeah, that's his laugh from Ocarina of Time. I might be obnoxious playing a whole bunch of sound effects like it is like Shock Time Radio. I don't know for sure.
Wait. You just said that's his laugh in Ocarina of Time. The gunman was in Ocarina of Time? Holy shit! This is amazing. I want to learn more about the gunman, this new character.
Mm-hmm. That was him. He was laughing. He was evil. He was Ganondorf.
Holy shit.
He has the third of the Triforce.
Oh my god.
So that's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, or on youtube.com/objectionnetwork. I haven't made an outro yet, so fuck y'all. We're done.
Dave, I want you to answer